Okay. Okay, so welcome, Kristine. Thank you for being here and chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, we want to talk and basically kind of give our listeners just a little bit about you. And so, tell everybody um, a lot of people, I think, have the misconception that competitors just live in the gym and that's all they do. So tell our listeners about what you do in real life.
Okay, yeah, so I work full time. I work at the courthouse, so and then I'm a mom of two. So my time at the gym is early in the mornings because my husband, he farms. So right now it's really busy time. So that's just where I have to devote my time is in the mornings. Where my husband and he's very loving and supportive. So we've worked out a schedule so that he helps me out in the mornings of getting the kids to where they need to go so I can go to the gym. And then I have the evenings for the kids and whatnot. So
I see you all the time on these early morning pre-workout 4 something a.m. and I'm like, oh, like I just I mean,
right.
I think one time in my life I did that. I'm not a morning person by nature. But I mean, I do think that like the more you do it, the more you kind of turn into a morning person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never used to be an early morning person. My mom, I don't know if it's genetics, but my mom gets up early too. And I always like, gosh, how can you do that? But then I don't know, it's you just do it. And especially when you're like, I have no other time to do this. This is the time to do it.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of you just got to do it. Some mornings are harder than others.
Yeah. Well, and I think once you get on that routine, it becomes easier, but it's priorities, right? Because everybody can say, well, I can't get up or, I don't have that much time. Well, you make the time if you have a goal.
Absolutely. Yep. It's all about priorities and what you're willing to do and how committed you are. Yeah. And to balance that lifestyle. Yeah.
Definitely. So tell me about where you are. So you have competed just one time, right?
Yep, one time, and that was during COVID. So I started training. It was 2019. I started training with the intent of doing a show that fall. But then, my coach at the time, we decided, okay, these things take time when you're trying to bodybuilding, and so we decided let's do a show in the spring. So anyway, so then January of 2020 started training. It was just supposed to be a 12-week prep, and then COVID 3 weeks before my show, COVID hit. So that was devastating because it was not only time. I mean, the amount of everybody. It was devastating for everybody because all the energy and the amount of time investment, and time away from my kids and my husband. I'm like, I'm not going to do a show. So what started out as a 12-week prep, it pretty much turned into like a 24-week prep because it was supposed to be an April show. I didn't do a show till June.
I was pretty close to the same thing, I think. So I started my prep in March of 2020. My boyfriend had started in February. I came behind him in March because he was supposed to do the Yorton Cup, which is like the OCB, like big show, in I think it was August. And so we were both prepping like, well, he started February, I started in March. Then we were doing it together like March, April, May, June. And so we had been in a good, 16 weeks. He was probably more, but he had a lot to lose. He said his off season is like really about, he was too off season at that point. So he said he had a lot more to lose, but anyway, so they never really announced like the Yorton Cup, and then it kept like being kind of, you're just like hanging there, like, is it gonna happen or not? And I told him, I said, I really feel like they're not going to have it because all of these other ones were getting canceled and whatever. So he decided at that point, we were on vacation in June, and he just kind of quit. And so then I'm like, well, I have not done this from like March all the way to now to not, I'm like, I'm going to find something. I don't care. And so I ended up, I just kept going till September of 2020 and found just an NPC show that was in Northern Virginia, because I'm like in Southwestern Virginia. And so, yeah, it was like, I think the worst is, I don't know, like I feel when you put in all of that time and effort, it's like you have to have something to kind of finalize it, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
it's like you got to celebrate that the commitment you put into it, and you're gonna see my
Mommy,
kid.
Are they talking?
Yeah, they're talking. Okay, gonna go watch your show. Sorry, I'm like, so yeah, it's one of like COVID kind of just slapped us in the face, and it's just like you're so close, and it's like I can't just not go on. I know there's like I'm sure a lot of competitors saying no, just try again next time. But for me, being in my first time, I was just like, I got to get on stage. I didn't put in all this time and effort for nothing. And so I made it happen. I of course wanted to do more, but it was very, I had to travel out of state, and there just wasn't really much around me. But so we just said, okay, let's do one, and then let's work on, what I need to improve on after that.
And so when was that for you that you did?
Yep, it was June, end of June 27th or so, 2020.
So what is your plan now? Like, what are you working towards next?
Yeah, so since then, I have a new coach, and so our plan is to do a show next spring. So I'm currently actually doing like it's a mini cut, but it's not like a drastic mini cut. We're just upped cardio. I had a really rough reversing out after my show. I always read about how hard it is to properly reverse out and why it's important. And so I knew everything going into coming out of the show, but you just don't know how hard it is till you're in it. And so I succumbed to like binge eating. Fortunately never succumbed to like purging or anything, but it was really rough because my ghrelin and leptin hormones were all out of whack. I could not get satisfied at all. So, I did put on weight, and more weight than I wanted to, but I'm in a good place now. So right now we're just the plan is to lean out a little bit, doing like a lean bulk, and then so that it's not so aggressive going into the prep after the holidays as I imagine.
Right. I'm kind of looking at the same timeline, I think, myself. But I mean, let's talk a little bit more about the reverse, because I mean, I don't know if you know this about me, but I competed my first time, now it's 21 years ago, was my very first show. That was in figure, when they had 1-piece and 2-piece rounds.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it's been quite a journey, and I had like many years with gaps in between and whatever, but it took me, I mean, I would say it took me a good 6 to 10 competitions to learn how to reverse, properly for me, because like, I have trained myself to compete, and I have coached others to compete, but I have also used coaches myself, because when I get closer and closer to shows, I start to second guess myself. And I like that input from somebody else. But let's talk about the reverse, because I don't think a lot of people understand like how extreme, like how did you feel like hunger wise going into the show, and then what did you feel like after the show? Because like I know how I felt, but I want your input.
Yeah, and so right up to the show, I remember being at the airport, and I'm like, and mentally I'm like, I'm hanging on by right now, because as much as I enjoyed the process of it all and I love the lifestyle of it, but it was a long prep and I was just ready to get to more of a normal and, normalcy of like enjoying my foods. But, and see, that's the thing, I was getting so food obsessed. Like when they're on Instagram, social media, you see all these brownies and stuff. And then you just like, it's like in your mind, you're like, oh my God, because you can't eat it. So that night after the show, I actually did fairly well. I ate till I was full and I didn't overdo it. It was coming home, and then with COVID, I was working from home and not just fully preparing myself to like get the foods that kids eat out and all that stuff. And then it was right around 4th of July. So it just was like a series of events where it's like I'd binge and then if I'd be fine for a few days and then I would binge again. Like it just like I was willing to do anything to get that like quick satisfaction. I felt like I was going crazy. I was like, what is wrong with me? I've never experienced this. And I finally, part of this whole process is like I should have reached out sooner to my coach and communicated with that. Because as far as I wish I had more of a structure coming off the show, but at the same time, I'm the one that put the food in my mouth. I'm the one that made the choice. Right. Yeah, it was great. It was I can't explain it, but the mental aspect of it is like you're in it, you're enjoying it, and then you're like, stop. You just stop what you stop. And then you get in this guilt, and then they're like, I'm a fraud. Like, who am I to, and I'm supposed to be an example. And then you get in it's just a vicious cycle. It was really just a vicious cycle. And I really struggled mentally coming off of it.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand. And I will tell you, like, that is 100% normal. And I have learned from every show. And the more I have, this is kind of like, this is my life, basically what I do, right? So I'm working on my PhD in health promotion, but I'm a coach and I'm a competitor. And like I said, it took me, like, you can have the best plan in the world to come out of a show. But here's the problem, and people don't seem to fully understand this, because it's not about willpower. It's about your hormones. And when you have been in a prep for that long, everything gets screwed up. So your body is basically fighting, like it's fighting to get you to that state of normal, right? So like as soon as the show's over, it's like there's all kinds of there's studies that are like, okay, so it looks at this study over here of, is it better to quickly reverse to get back to the level of body fat that you need to be at? Because as a female, when you step on stage, you are beyond healthy lean. Like you're beyond the healthy point. You're not healthy anymore. And so your body wants you to get back to that. And so you're trying to fight it, but you really can't, and you shouldn't. But there does have to be that plan. But even the best plans, when your mind is saying, or when your body is telling your mind, give me this, it's like, that's when you get into that too much all at once, because your body is just trying to hurry up and get me back to where I am some kind of normal.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's something I've learned. Obviously it's been the harder way, but your body's so sensitive coming off a show.
Oh,
and
it is.
You're so vulnerable. And then it's crazy how, and you feel alone, even though you're not alone. But especially like where I'm from, like I could tell you 2 people in the area I live in that compete. Otherwise it's nobody, your loved ones can understand and support it, but they really truly don't understand. And it was my posing coach. I just love her. I posted something on my Instagram and she reached out to me, and just the whole, like, you are not alone. I had the same thing. Just hearing other competitors, especially the professional, like the ones that have their pro cards that have had their struggles. So comforting and knowing there's hope, and it's like, okay, it's not just me. You know, it's very normal, but yeah, you do feel alone in it when you're in the thick of it.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, because I'm the same way. Where my gym is at, the town I grew up in, I don't think there's anybody there like that's
Yeah.
ever competed
Yeah.
that I know of. And even where I am now, I know a few people, you know, but of course where I am now is a lot bigger than where I grew up. But,
Right.
you know, I mean, because if you haven't been in it, there's not an understanding, like, because like people can go through transformations and you can change your body and you can be a whole different person. But I'm telling you, when you get to that level of lean and when you've gotten to that far that you're going to compete, your brain is different. And unless you've been there, like you really can't understand it.
Exactly.
Most people have not separated themselves with food or whatever they want for long enough to ever get when you're off stage, it's like, what are all of the things that I wanted that I didn't get to eat? And then you just want them all at one time.
Exactly. I know, right? Exactly. Because there's the treats in the back, and then it's like you get so overwhelmed with, oh my god, I got to eat all things, like it's like you're never going to eat them again, when that's not true, you know.
Right. So I try to tell all of my clients, look, you know, I have a few competitors right now that are getting ready for the stage, and it feels like stuff's not going to be there, but I tell them it's the same thing with food as it is with a competition. Okay, like it will always be there. There will always be a competition. Like, what I don't like to see is somebody rush into a show just for the sake of doing a show, right? Because obviously you have to put in the time, but you also want to feel like you're very confident when you're on the stage. And if you rush it too much, then you're not going to be where you need to be, you know? I think,
Yeah, absolutely. The stage will, and that's something I was told by my former coach, like the stage will always be there. And it's like, because after my first show, I'm like, I want to do it again. Like you get this high, and it's, you know, the high, I was like, oh, I'm going to get on stage in 2020 for sure. But, and then it's like the longer, you know, you're away from the stage, and then you realize, okay, I know what my feedback is, and knowing it takes a long time to put on muscle. It takes a long time to build what you want to build. So it's better, even though it's hard, but it's better to just put in that time. And so that, because the worst thing I say to myself is getting back on stage and comparing my first time and not seeing any progress. Like, right. I don't want that, you know?
I have to say, you know, that's one thing that, you know, you should always try to beat your past self. Right. So, because, you know, you don't know who the judges are going to be. You don't know who's going to show up on the stage. But if you have made progress yourself, then you're making progress. It's a success. Right. So, and I will say, like, every off season I have had, I will tend to drag it a little bit longer because it does take so long to build muscle. Like, I learned the hard way. So I started 21 years ago. But I didn't really, 2009, the end of 2009, I had decided, okay, in 2010, I'm going to start. And like, if I'm going to compete, it's all going to be about building for the next show and trying to improve myself each time. Right. So I made the mistake of, this is another learning experience. I made the mistake of, I did too many shows too close together for multiple years, because at that time it was like, oh, you have to get yourself out there. They have to know you, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, whatever, you know, I wish that I knew then what I know now. But so in like 2010, 11, and 12, I did like 3-figure shows per year. And they were about 2 to 3 months apart. And I'm like, that has got to be the dumbest thing I ever did, because you have no time to recover. You're basically like, you get to breathe and then start prepping again. And it's like, that's not recommended. You know,
you don't realize how much it wreaks havoc on your body, as far as, you know, your hormones and everything, that you just, I didn't really realize it. But knowing, like, for me, I didn't have a cycle. I lost my cycle during a mini cut, and then after 3 months it came back. But by the time I was going to get blood work, and that was when it came back, and it was like, well, we're starting prep soon, so I'm going to lose it again. And from January, it wasn't until August that I got my cycle.
wow.
So it's, you don't realize how, and everybody responds differently. I understand some competitors still get their cycle,
Right.
which is great. I mean, I know you don't want it on your show day, but at least your
Oh, I've
body.
had it on a show day before. It's not fun.
No, I bet not. But it's like, for me, it's like, okay, when's my cycle coming back? You know, and what does that mean? You know, it's like, because you're supposed to have like what, at least three a year, I think it is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I never lost mine. But you know, sometimes I wish I would have. But you know, because everybody is different, and like, you can be varying levels of leanness, and that's another thing I think that people need to understand too, is that you can't compare yourself to other competitors in the body fat department, because like, your body fat percentage is going to look a lot different on your frame. So you can't say, oh, well, you know, to compete in figure, you have to be this body fat percentage or less. Or, you know, like, I know what I should be when I compete, because I know what I have been before, and I know where I need to be. But, you know, my 10% might look the same as your 15%. You know, it's all like how your muscles are shaped, where you hold more fat than others, you know, because when you're on stage, it's going to look a lot different on some people. You know, your fat distribution is just different. So, I mean, and that makes a big difference too in, I think, your cycles, because your hormones, you know, your fat intake has a huge influence on your hormones too. So, you know, that's something that you got to look at. But I want to ask you, so what do you think, so as your first time competing in 2020, and when are you getting ready? You're going to go for spring of 2022, you're thinking, right?
Yep. Plan.
So tell me, what have you learned? What have you learned since by doing your first competition, or since that time, that you think is super important for a competitor to know, like on their first time competing?
Oh man, so many things I've learned. How much, like how much you need to work. Like, oh gosh, where can I start? When you're starting a prep, you know, any first time competitor or who's interested, I'm always like, go to a show first, you know, really know what you're getting yourself into. Because it's not like, if your idea is just to get on stage, that's not a good enough reason. So along the way, you know, it's it's everything. You want to talk about nutrition, it's like, oh my God, you know, how big key nutrition plays in your body composition and training. You know, dealing with the mental challenges, that this is all part of the process. Even if you have self-doubt. I mean, I was 3 days out, and I saw a competitor that was going to be at the show, and I freaked myself out. I was like, oh my God, I did that comparison game. Don't do the comparison game. Because you can't control who's all bringing what. You can't control the judges. You can only control yourself. And especially for first time competitors, just when you get on that stage, just enjoy your time. I didn't really have any high expectations. Like, I didn't even think, if I don't walk away with any hardware, that's fine. I really wanted for the experience. But it's all encompassing, like working on yourself internally, especially when you're coming off a show, the body dysmorphia that you can potentially have. Because at some point you're going to lose the lines, you're going to lose that shredded look, and that's hard. especially if you come, like for me, I used to be very overweight. And then for 2 years, I just was always in a deficit, always, losing weight. So coming off this show, it was needed for me to put on some weight so that I can build some muscle. So having that thicker look was hard, just because you're not used to seeing. It's not so much like, it's hard to say, like the thicker look that you're training and you're not as this lean look. But yeah, just that mindset. I've always been in this lean phase for so long and when you have to put on muscle, it's hard. Like the whole thing is hard, but it's what makes it worth it. So yeah, I've learned that, like, how much time it takes to reverse out, how sensitive your body is. And, I kind of, in some ways, I kind of compare it to like a post-pregnancy. I had 2 C-sections and it took time. And mentally, I wanted to be here. My body was not. So, same thing was like, I mentally wanted to be on stage sooner than later, but my body was just not ready.
Right. Well, and I think, you have to give your body that recovery time. And, I remember after my September show, it was probably like, I don't remember exactly when September it was, but I'm thinking it was like mid-September. But I remember it being end of October, and I had been like upping my calories for a good 6 weeks. And, you have to allow yourself that after show kind of like recovery time a little bit. But so I tried to always not have way too much right after the show, allow myself so many, free meals a week or whatever it may be. But I remember a good 6 weeks later, I still did not feel normal. And, you have to recover, number one, but number two, you have to remember that, like, again, your body wants you to return to that normal state of hormones and body fat. And so you've got to allow yourself that, because that is the point at which you're going to be able to start to add more lean. If you don't even get to there, this is why, like, I tell people, you can't look at everybody on Instagram and like they're shredded, like about to step on stage. Look, these people probably have pictures that are enough pictures to post for 2 years, and you're not even seeing what they're looking like right now. And so you've got to give yourself that recovery time. And then, because you can't get to where you can put on lean muscle until everything is balanced out, and you have to have some extra body fat in order to gain. You cannot gain muscle if you're in a caloric deficit.
Right.
Like, if you can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, technically, but it's very slow. But you're not going to gain muscle if you don't have the calories to build with.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. There's just so many the lessons you learn along the way, and things like I would just read up on, and you just find all these, and in like nutrition, you find creative ways to help with, like if I had like egg whites or eggs or however, and put some like sugar-free syrup just to get that, just to get that sweet tooth. Or you get very creative when you're on prep.
Yes. Especially when you have barely any carbs.
Right. Exactly.
You're like, what can I have that tastes like a carb if I can't eat a carb, right? So how's everything looking for you? Like now, do you have a plan for like, you're kind of building right now, right?
Yep.
So till like towards the end of the year, and then you'll start your cut for the show?
Yeah, that's the plan. My feedback from my first show was I need to build up my glutes and hamstrings, which when I looked back on they did a live feed, so I rewatched it, and I instantly knew, compared to the other girls, I'm like, I need to build a little more. I felt like I was a little more flat then my check-in pictures, I remember there was one check-in picture, and I can't remember if it was from my first planned show, but I was like, man, my glutes were really good then, and so they just weren't as sharp, and so that was the feedback to build up the glutes and hamstrings. So I've been working on that. And then, so last winter, I did a hormone test, and my estrogen levels were elevated. And there was something else elevated that I can't remember. But since then, I rechecked my blood levels, and those are normal. So that's good. And then I did a full blood panel this past few months because my energy, I just hit a period of really low energy. I wasn't sure what was going on. My kidney levels were elevated. So we are taking this approach of still eating, still keeping my protein levels the same, but just the bioavailability, like doing some more vegan, like 60 grams, like a vegan protein. So just trying to, and then drinking a lot of water. So I'm on 2 gallons a day, and it's been great since. So my energy levels are great. But yeah, so recently, like I would say 2-3 weeks ago, we decided we're gonna do like a mini cut. She wanted to get my thoughts on it. I said, absolutely. I feel like, so we're not so aggressive or having a super hard prep for when we start. Let's just slowly like try and lean out a little more and then see where we're at.
Yeah. I feel like I'm like in the same place. Like I'm in a mini cut, right? I've been on a mini cut for, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks. But
Okay.
I mean, I'm thinking that, my plan was just maybe like 8 weeks, but my goal was to get my body fat down just like a couple percent, because I feel like when you're building and when you're trying to grow muscle, like there's a range that you're going to be at, like body fat wise, that's ideal to build, where you've got enough calories to build, but you're not having excess body fat. Because when you get into that excess body fat and you're trying to build, it's like your body's just not going to respond well. It's like you've got too much fat, right? So I think there's a range that in every person could be different. But I know that, like for me, I tend to be on the leaner side, I think, anyway. Like, growing up, I was like the little twig, like, I mean, just like, it's hard. It's really hard for me to gain muscle. And as I grew, it was more of like, okay, well, I was just skinny fat. And then it was like, okay, so I'm going to try to gain muscle. And then it's just like a monumental effort, like every single year. But I find that if I get past this certain level of body fat, then it almost like drags me back a little bit, where I don't have the energy to like put in the work to build the muscle, if that makes sense. Because it's like when you've got too much body fat, it's just, it almost makes you tired in a sense, so you've got to be like that ideal level to like where you can build it. So that's why I think, like, if you're in an off season, you're going to put on some body fat, and that's okay to like gradually put on a little bit over time as you're building. But if you get up to this certain level, then I think you should do a mini cut to get it back down, so you're more in those optimal level of gains, level of body fat.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, well, that sounds good. So let's just end with the top tip. Okay, so obviously you said, somebody that's new to competing, go to a show, check it out, see what it's all about, if this is something like you really want to do. But what would you tell like a competitor or somebody that wants to be a competitor, other than that? What would be like your top thing for them to know, to be prepared for?
I would say be prepared for the like like you're gonna have challenges, but be prepared. But also surround yourself with like-minded people. There's so many groups online, or especially if you have family members or people that just don't understand your lifestyle or don't agree with it. That's really hard if you don't have their love and support. So, you know, whether it's someone close to you, close nearby that competes, or at least is loving, supporting, surround yourself with a support like system, because especially people that have done this before, because they get it, and you know, lean on them when you need, when in times of need, because they're the ones that are going to help you, and especially if you have a coach, lean on your coach. That would be my top two, as well as like, if you're going to do it, it is a money investment, but get a coach, number one, and posing coach, and like lean in on them, because they know they're there to help you, and they understand the sport. So because not every prep is going to be the same, and that's the thing I'm keeping an open mind, is like, when I do start another prep, is it, you know, is it going to be the same as last time? Who knows? Not every prep is the same, from what I understand.
No,
So,
never, Kristine, never, ever. So, I mean, everyone I have ever done, I will tell you, this is why, and I think this is why, like, some people a lot of times will just do one competition and then quit, because it is hard, right? But every single one for me has been different. It's never been the same cardio. It's never been the same nutrition, and it's always harder. It takes longer. Every single time I have done it, it has taken longer. And I mean, you know, I'm sure it's just from age, but it's like, oh, it's hard. It really is.
right. Yeah. So that would be my thing, is like, get a coach, lean in on them, communicate with them, find support groups, or groups within Facebook, or however, and just really ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if it's your coach and they want to do something and you're not sure why. Ask why. Ask for the reasoning. This is your life, your health. Which is very important, because you're going to be putting your body through the ringer.
Right. Okay, so be sure that you send me like your coach's information, your posing coach's information. If you have like a suit person that you use, you know, throw them to me too. And then your contact information, I'll be sure to put that in the notes when I post this on YouTube. And so people can follow along with your journey if they want, and know who you're working with and all that good stuff. Okay.
Okay, awesome. Will do.
Thank you so much for talking to us, and I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.